Disney CEO Bob Iger seems to be at a loss. According to rumors, he's unsure how to handle the Snow White live-action remake after its trailer became one of the most disliked in cinematic history. Reports suggest they're reworking parts of the movie, cutting scenes they believe fans won't like, but is that enough to fix the problem? Apparently not, as Iger himself is reportedly frustrated and skeptical about the production team's direction.
Shareholders. In new SEC filing, Disney is now admitting that it's been slapped by its own customers for its far-left social and political...
Given the kind of year Disney has had, the CEO is probably counting down the days to 2025. Problems for Disney only increased in the years 2023 and 2024, but what was the blunder they were making? They actually started taking old classical stories and making them live action while completely tempering the story according to their vision of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but everything backfired because it was less about accepting everyone and more about attacking the existence of white men, so by any measure it has been an absolutely disastrous phase for the company. Bob Iger, Disney's CEO, probably spent more time scrambling to put out fires than he did doing anything else. I mean, it wasn't just one or two flops, it was flop after flop after flop. At this point, it's like they've made losing money an art form, and the timing, oh, just perfect. It all went down during Disney's 100th anniversary, yes, the year of the 100th anniversary, and it was supposed to be magnanimous for the company, but instead it became one of the worst years in Disney's history.
To $254 billion, a decline of, Vinny, you ready? They lost $196 billion in 1 year.
What?
$196 billion, a 56%.
Now as if things weren't bad enough, Snow White 2025 is shaping up to be an even bigger disaster. Honestly, it's almost impressive how badly this project is going. We're talking 5 failed test screenings. That's not a red flag, it's a giant neon sign screaming, abort the mission. And yet here we are, Disney's still doubling down, desperately trying to salvage what's left of this sinking ship. Between the public backlash, ongoing boycotts, and behind-the-scenes drama with Rachel Zeller and Gal Gadot, this movie has chaos written all over it. The issue is it's not just about Snow White, it's about Disney's relentless push for diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in a way that feels more performative than genuine. Look, inclusivity is a good thing, it should have been happening naturally ages ago, but Disney's approach is less about bringing people together and more about alienating longtime fans instead of celebrating everyone. They've turned it into a battle, painting anyone who disagrees as some kind of villain given this situation. Only a person with no mind would love this movie, and speaking of being fed up, Bob Iger is apparently losing it behind the scenes. Rumor has it he's frustrated, panicking, and doing whatever he can to keep the company afloat, but realistically speaking, damage control isn't exactly his strong suit. Remember when he tried to downplay the backlash by saying they'd quiet the noise? Yeah, that was a joke. Fast forward 8 months, and here we are with Snow White still blowing up in his face. Iger's big idea. Keep leaning into day like it's some magic solution, except spoiler alert, it's not working in one of his more recent statements. Iger went on a whole rant about the boycotts, calling them insulting and inflammatory. According to him, the critics are a minority who don't understand Disney's vision for a more inclusive future. Okay, Bob, but here's the thing, if that's true, why are your movies tanking left and right? Why is Snow White facing such massive pushback? Maybe, just maybe, it's not the audience that's the problem, maybe it's the product.
Disney lose? Then what did it say, 200 how much? Because what? They're having a problem with their content because the people that you're talking about, us against them.
CGI dwarfs, forget the CGI dwarfs. Oh, the dwarfs who thought this was a good idea. They look cheap, lifeless, and downright embarrassing for a company with Disney's resources. The decision to replace real actors with this mess feels like a game over shot from Disney. It clearly looked like they didn't try to make things special but took everything for granted, and the fans noticed. Undoubtedly they noticed. With this, Disney lost the very audience who were keeping the lore of Snow White live. Since the 1930s, everything Disney did mixed up to be a recipe for disaster for the PR of the The irony in all of this is that Bob Iger is supposedly gearing up to retire in 2026. He's trying to secure his legacy, but at this rate his legacy will be the guy who ran Disney into the ground. It's almost sad to watch but then you remember for all the blatant missteps, the tone-deaf decisions, and the way they keep doubling down on bad ideas. And it's hard to feel too sorry for him. The situation got so serious that even Disney's board of directors is reportedly losing patience. It got to the point that some of them were pushing for Snow White to skip theaters altogether and go straight to Disney+. Honestly, that might be their best move at this point. Sure, it won't save the movie from being a disaster, but that could at least soften the blow. The problem is Iger's ego won't let that happen. He's determined to prove the doubters wrong, even if it means dragging the company through the mud in the process.
Is any of it Bob Iger's fault? Of course it is. Right, but Bob Iger wasn't uninvolved in setting the stage for what was going to come after him. You're not Bob Iger and then shocked and dismayed to figure out who they replaced.
Now the interesting thing is Disney's problems. Disney's problems don't end with Snow White. It's absolutely not all this major boycott and crisis. It's not just about one movie, it's about their approach to making movies. Fans feel like the company has completely lost sight of what made it special in the first place. Rather than focusing on presenting storytelling and timeless characters with special regard, they're obsessed with pushing every little point of woke agendas, and let's be honest, it's not working. The audience can see right through it, and they're not buying what Disney's selling. Literally, the solution is not simple. Well, to make anything better in the future, Disney should stop acting like everything is fine when it's clearly not. What they can do is own their mistakes, listen to the fans, and focus on making quality content again. But knowing Disney, they'll probably keep forcing their agenda more on the audience while blaming them and, in the end, stupidly wondering why things aren't getting better at this rate. 2025 will be no different than 2023 or 24. Disney's stubbornness is the reason why some investors are accusing the company of sabotaging itself with what they're calling a woke political agenda. The main gripe Disney has is that it has moved so far away from its family-friendly roots that it's now alienating its core audience and in the process tanking its own shareholders.
I have to tell you, I don't know anything really about the law, but if I were a shareholder, I would want a class action suit against Bob Iger because Bob is the reason it started.
So this drama is about a 50-page letter from Reed Rubenstein, a former Department of Justice official and now Senior VP at America First Legal, AFL. Rubenstein claims Disney's programs are pushing anti-police and anti-white content and that their so-called virtue signaling is backfiring spectacularly. He wants some numbers. Since February 2021, Disney's market cap has nosedived by nearly 40%. That's right, it's dropped from $341 billion to a measly $27 billion. For context, that's like watching a mansion shrink into a tiny fixer-upper. Rubenstein called out specific shows, like Disney content, that promote the woke agenda. Apparently this show tells kids that racism in the world affects me and you and pushes the idea that skin color is the ultimate defining factor of identity and look. Talking about racism isn't the issue, it's how Disney's handling it. Critics are saying it's less about education and more about indoctrination. Then there's the infamous Muppet Babies episode. Remember Gonzo, the quirky, bird-like creature who's always been a little offbeat? Rubenstein argues that this storyline is less about acceptance and more about pushing an agenda. To be fair, Gonzo has always been a wild card, but this plot twist is definitely raising eyebrows. Marvel's not off the hook either. Rubenstein's letter points to Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, where police are depicted firing tear gas at peaceful protesters, according to Rubenstein. Moments like this add fuel to the fire, painting law enforcement in a bad light and alienating Disney's more non-left viewers.
We're going to tell our story. No, you are here to tell the story that our audiences want to hear.
So what's the endgame here? The endgame, according to the AFL, Disney needs to ditch the progressive agenda and get back to its roots. Gene Hamilton, AFL's executive director, says Disney's been pandering to an insatiable activist movement that's dragging the brand far from its original magic. Instead of timeless stories and universal appeal, we're getting content that feels more like a lecture. So what are your views about Disney and Bob Iger's efforts to promote a woke agenda and audience reaction? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting videos on Disney Backlash with the audience. See you in the next one.